southbound from junction 21 to 22, the stretch between Weston-super-Mare and Burnham-on-Sea for recovery work following an accident and spillage. And the A55 is down to a single-lane eastbound in Flintshire towards Norfolk at the scene of an accident. Long queues back to Holywell. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister. Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
A very, very good evening to you. It's Thursday, the 3rd of October. I'm Martin Daubney, covering for Nigel Farage, the big man, on tonight's Farage. Well, the Prime Minister is clearly trying to draw attention away from the Labour donations row by handing over the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands over to Mauritius. Have Labour just opened the door to the Chinese dragon? And next up, GB News can exclusively reveal that a video previously posted by Dawn Butler to mock Black History Month contain pictures of convicted black terrorists, a cop killer and even a rapist. Charlie Peters will be with us soon to give us the scoop of the day. And a pub landlord has put the parsnips amongst the carrots after he started charging customers for their leftovers. Is he right to have a beef with his customers? I'll be getting his side of the story later, and many more roast-related puns. Now, all of that to come. But first, here's your news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories. At least 9 people have been killed in an Israeli airstrike in central Beirut, according to Lebanese officials. The Israeli military says it was a precision attack on a building, which they say housed a Hezbollah-affiliated health centre. It comes as Israel has today warned more people to evacuate in southern Lebanon. Meanwhile, Hezbollah says it's detonated a bomb against Israeli forces infiltrating a southern Lebanese village. Israel is carrying out an offensive against the Iranian-backed terror group, which partly prompted Iran to launch around 180 ballistic missiles at Israel. Meanwhile, more than 150 British nationals have left Lebanon on the first UK government-chartered flight out of the country. Foreign Secretary David Lammy confirmed there will be additional chartered flights to help those who want to leave, as he warned about the volatile situation. In other news, Downing Street says the Prime Minister has paid back more than £6,000 worth of gifts and hospitality received since becoming Prime Minister following a backlash over donations. It comes as the Labour peer at the centre of a row over donations to Sir Keir Starmer has been placed under investigation by the House of Lords standards watchdog. Lord Ali faces a probe over what is being called the alleged non-registration of interests. He's one of the party's biggest donors and the largest donor to the Prime Minister. And the UK has announced it's giving up sovereignty of the Chagos Islands after more than half a century. The deal, reached after years of negotiations, will see Britain hand over the Chagos Islands to China ally Mauritius. It includes the tropical atoll of Diego Garcia, which is home to a military base used by the UK and the US. Under the agreement, the base will remain under UK and US jurisdiction for at least the next 99 years. But Conservative leadership candidates reacted angrily to this, with former Foreign Secretary James Cleverly labelling the government weak and Robert Jenrick saying there's been a surrender. Tom Tugendhat says the move undermines our security.
What it does is it means that although the airbase, which is jointly UK-US operated, is maintained on a 99-year lease, the other outlying islands go back to Mauritian sovereignty. Now, there are many other countries which will be interested in a permanent base in the Indian Ocean, China being one of them.
And a man has been arrested after a suspected acid attack which seriously injured a 14-year-old girl outside a school in West London. The attack happened at around 4:40 p.m. on Monday at a school in Alfred Road, where a substance was allegedly thrown at 2 children and a member of staff. That 14-year-old girl remains in hospital with potentially life-changing injuries and has undergone surgery. An investigation was launched, and this morning a 35-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of causing grievous bodily harm. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Welcome to Farage with me, Martin Daubney, standing in for the big man. Now, today, the Labour government announced it will surrender the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to China-aligned Mauritius. Labour claims it's an historic move that will end years of tense negotiations. Well, it may be historic, but is it really an historic mistake? Well, the deal supposedly secures the future of the UK joint US-UK military base on the land, yet Mauritius so perilously closely tied to Jinping's China. The loudest cheers today surely will be coming from Beijing. And even New Labour refused to cede the territory under Tony Blair, although, of course, it did give away Hong Kong. Now, does Starmer surrender at every turn? My question for you at home tonight is this, quite simply, will there be a great British giveaway under the Labour Party? Email farage@gbnews.com or, of course, tweet or X now, and that's the hashtag Farage on GB News. Well, joining me in the studio is the former Conservative MP Daniel Kaczynski, who warned earlier this year that giving away the Chagos Islands would only please Beijing. And I'm also joined by my panel of the former Conservative MP Ranil Jayawardena and the former Labour advisor, special advisor Paul Richards. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Daniel, let's kick off with you. A lot of people saying today this is simply a huge strategic mistake. The Red Dragon's fangs will be dripping. Explain to people who may not have heard of the Chagos Islands before today why it's so strategically important to the United Kingdom.
Well, I was sent out there by the Foreign Office in 2019 with 2 other members of Parliament. Normally, you're not allowed to go to these islands. It's a highly restricted military base, 58 islands in the middle of the Indian Ocean. The whole maritime area around the islands that we control is 2 times the size of the United Kingdom, right in the middle of the Indian Ocean. These islands are worth hundreds of billions of dollars. But the most important thing is, when we allowed the Americans to build a military base there, we shamedly expelled the entire indigenous population, the Chagosians. There were about 2,000 to 3,000 of them. We expelled them. They went to Mauritius, Seychelles, Britain, and other jurisdictions. Now, we have met with them on many occasions in the House of Commons. They are desperate to remain British. They want to return to their islands, having been expelled by us in 1968. It's perfectly reasonable for them to the outer islands, not on Diego Garcia, where the main military base is. They want to return, and they want to have a referendum as to who their islands belong to. This Labour government has decided to completely bypass the wishes of the people whose islands these belong to and hand the territory over to a foreign nation. That is unforgivable, and it puts at risk the whole concept of the right of self-determination, which is the bedrock of our relationship with all 16 British overseas territories.
But it's fair to point out that even though the territory was given away, surrendered, some might say today, by the Labour government, this was a conversation begun by James Cleverly, I understand, under the previous Conservative regime. So the Conservative Party has its fingerprints on this disaster too.
Well, there have been some rulings against us in the International Court of Justice, and therefore all governments have a responsibility to react to those sort of international rulings. My point that I'm trying to make, which I try to make repeatedly in Parliament, is we can turn this upside down, protect the islands by actually allowing the indigenous people to return and allow them to decide for themselves. That is not possible under the handover that the Labour Party want to give to Mauritius, which, by the way, is, I'm afraid, a client puppet state of China. And China basically controls the Mauritius economy through the Belt and Road policy. We can't share a military base with the Chinese, but they will get one of the other outer islands from Mauritius very, very quickly. They will take a long-term lease and they will make our position untenable. And at a time when the Chinese are taking over control of the South China Sea by stealing hundreds of atolls from Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia and Indonesia, and trying to turn the South China Sea into a Chinese lake. At the time that's happening, we're bending over backwards to accommodate Mauritius. Totally counterintuitive, particularly at the time when we've just signed the AUKUS agreement with Australia and America, allowing us to re-enter the Indian and Pacific Oceans for the first time in my lifetime. Totally counterintuitive.
Daniel, aside from the Chagos Islands, we've been contacted today by people who live in the Falkland Islands, those who live on Gibraltar. Is this a flash of the ankle, a direction of travel perhaps of where the Labour Party might be heading? Is there a feeling that foreign policy could be ruled by the burden of history, the shame of the empire, of the colonies, of slavery? There are people in the Labour Party sitting now who would like to do slavery reparations, for example. Is this the tip of the iceberg?
The Chagosians, the indigenous people, are descendants of slaves from Africa and Madagascar. They have their own food, they have their own culture, they have their own music. They are totally separate indigenous people from Mauritius. What this Labour government is saying, sorry, we're not interested in you, we're not interested in the right of self-determination, we're interested in facilitating a deal with Mauritius for a quiet life. That is the thin end of the wedge, because the people of the Falkland Islands and the other 16 British overseas territories should look very carefully at what this Labour government is doing to trash the concept of the right of self-determination, bringing shame to the United Kingdom.
Okay, Daniel, thank you. Let's bring in my panel now, Paul and Ranil. Paul, I'm going to start with you as a former Labour special advisor. A lot of people saying, as I said a moment ago, that this is a direction of travel, an indication that the Labour Party is doing foreign policy based on a sense of shame of what Britain stands for and therefore giving away first Chagos. What next?
I mean, it's worth reminding ourselves that this whole process was begun by the Conservative government, and it's about the geopolitics of the region. It isn't about the leadership contest for the Tory party or a way to bash the Labour Party. It is about Britain's strategic interests. I think guaranteeing that the base continues as a crucial strategic asset in the Indian Ocean for the RAF and the Americans is a vital part of this.
But the problem with that is that the lease is for 99 years. For the Chinese, they think in epochs. 99 years is the bat of an eyelid.
But the crucial point is, does it affect our relationship with the Falklands, Gibraltar and the other overseas territories? No, it doesn't. And I mean, the message has to be loud and clear. This is nothing to do with those questions. And under a Labour government, there'll be no suggestion whatsoever of handing back or ceding the Falklands or Gibraltar.
Are you telling me that the chainsaw-wielding president of Argentina won't be emboldened by this, that King Carlos won't be emboldened by this? Does this project really a strength of British, a vision of British strength or a vision of vulnerability and weakness on the world stage?
I don't think it's a weakness. I think it shows vision and leadership. It's about big, dramatic decisions that are in the interest of this country. But like I say, you cannot conflate our situation in the Falklands, Gibraltar or anywhere else with what's going on. This is not showing ankle at all. And I understand why people want to do that, but that is not what is going on, nor is it driven by some sense of post-colonial guilt. It is about our geopolitical position in the Indian Ocean, and that's it.
I forgot one thing, though. Which is when we gave Mauritius her independence in 1965, we gave them, as final settlement for these islands, £3 million, which in 1965 was a lot of taxpayers' money. Mauritius took the money and they accepted that the British Indian Ocean Territory would remain British. That was a treaty signed in 1965. So this overturns an international treaty which Mauritius entered into voluntarily.
That kind of money that I'm sure the Chinese can just find down the back of their sofa. Ranil, let's go to you. You were vociferously shaking your head there as Paul was speaking. What's your take on what many people are just calling the Great British Giveaway?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I've met the, representatives of the Chagossan people here in the UK as well when I was on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and it's very clear that they don't have a clear view on this. They want to be able to have a say, and that's why the idea of a referendum would be an important way of doing that. What this decision today has done is means that those people don't get a say. And I just challenge one point, which is, this decision is a decision that has been taken by the Labour government. It's a decision that was blocked repeatedly by Conservative Foreign Secretaries, James Cleverly, David Cameron, even though they were obliged to start a process as a result of the International Court's decision. So, the Conservative Foreign Secretaries acted, they blocked it. The Labour government have acquiesced, they've surrendered.
But if you start a process, you open the cat flap.
You are obliged to start the process, but of course, as was discovered during Brexit, you can say no deal. We can walk away. Certainly, Conservative Foreign Secretaries blocked it. The Labour government have accepted
What
it.
is astounding is just how quickly they've abandoned this territory. That's what shocks me. They've been in office for less than 3 months.
We've been debating it for 20 years.
The greatest proponent of this, of course, is their former leader, Jeremy Corbyn, who has actively tried to ensure that this territory is handed over. And that is exactly the point that you made, Martin, which is this element of the Labour Party that is embarrassed about our colonial past and believes it's something to be jettisoned or shoved under the carpet, rather than celebrating the fact that these people, despite the way we've treated them by expelling them from their own islands, despite that, they want to remain British, and we're not allowing them to remain British.
That's Jeremy Corbyn's position right there. You sound like Jeremy Corbyn. He's the one who's been banging on about them returning to the Chagos Islands. Your line is exactly his, and he'll be outraged today because of the reasons you described, which is they're not being given a free passage back to Chagos Islands. And also, you're right to say they don't all want to go back. Some of the people living in Crawley and elsewhere are quite happy living in the UK.
Well, we have found a lady, Madame Dugas, who lives in London, and we are taking this to the High Court because ultimately she is somebody who was born there. She has no connections with Mauritius whatsoever, and yet we're saying to her, actually, in reality, we're not interested. We're going to hand your homeland to a foreign entity which is over 2,000 kilometres away, with whom you have no connections with whatsoever.
Daniel, can I quickly put it to you, Ranil? There's been no debate about this in Parliament, no opportunity to talk about it, let alone to vote on it. Is that another sort of tawdry part of this movement?
Well, it's as if they want to slip it through without scrutiny. But I know, having been on the receiving end of scrutiny through trade agreements, that it is now up to Parliament to be able to scrutinise it, to be able to have debates on it. I hope that they won't shy away from that scrutiny. We had debates on all sorts of things during the Conservative government, so I hope the Labour government will have a full, open, unconstrained debate on it and hear what Parliament has to say. And then we'll find out, won't we, if Labour MPs want to surrender this territory and want to allow that slippery slope to continue with Gibraltar, the Falklands and others potentially down the line, or whether Labour MPs, along with Conservatives, I'm sure, standing up for British interests. And this is, in the interest not only of the United Kingdom and of her people here, but indeed of the Western world as well, working with our allies.
OK, gents, we have to do it there. Ranil, Paul, Daniel, thank you very much. A great start to the show. Thank you, gentlemen. Now, coming up next, a GB News exclusive for you from Charlie Peters. A Labour MP has posted a video containing pictures of terrorists, cop killers and rapists to celebrate Black History Month. You couldn't make it up. More on that next.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Is the fact that electric blanket sales going up actually a good thing? This means that people are switched on to the problems that the winter might hold, that they might have some defence against it, or is it a real indictment of a Labour government that they aren't going to be able to, support elderly people in their hour of need?
Good morning, by the way.
Morning.
I think the sale of electric blankets may well be because we've had this cold snap because of the Arctic weather coming in from the north. However, I think it's an absolute reality that, as your clip said, that over 800,000 elderly people who are eligible for the winter fuel allowance, who can get pension credits, are struggling to apply. And so what is absolutely essential at the moment is that all of those older people who are eligible for pension credits do apply and do get what's owed to them. The benefits are owed to them. And the average that people will get through pension credits is about £78 a week. So that's definitely going to make a massive difference to people who are really struggling.
What can organisations like yours do to encourage people to, educate themselves on technology and make that first step into the digital world, which is very intimidating at times?
Absolutely, and that's what we do at Good Things Foundation. So we're a national charity. We work all across the whole of the UK. And in your clip there, you had Links Digital, and they're a member of what we call the National Digital Inclusion Network, which is a network of local charities, small local community organisations, food banks, job centres, old people's clubs. So any organisation at that local level.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Dordman, standing in for the big man now. I've got a couple of comments responding to our previous item about Chagos Islands. And Muriel says this: Mauritius has had a Chinese town in the centre for many years. Need I say more? Well, we've got one in London. The security of the Indian Ocean is now at greater risk. China will be rubbing its hands in glee. Who will Labour betray next? Gibraltar or perhaps the Falklands? Ryan adds this: the first duty of government is defence of the realm. By surrendering British territory, Starmer is nothing short of a traitor. Have Labour learnt nothing from Hong Kong? So let's move on now to our next topic, and it's a corker. A Labour MP has deleted her video celebrating Black History Month after GB News revealed that her footage contained a celebratory collage, as you can see on your screens now, of convicted murderers and sex offenders. Dawn Butler had shared a spoken verse video where she celebrated African freedom fighters, but the clip included photos of several criminals and highly controversial figures. Well, our national reporter Charlie Peters got this exclusive scoop and he joins me now in the studio. Charlie, it's an astonishing video. Tell us about the original post from Ms. Butler.
Well, before I revealed that there were these pretty controversial characters, well, worse than pretty controversial, convicted murderers and rapists in this video, it was already a fairly curious poem that Dawn Butler, the Labour MP for Brent East, had uploaded. She spoke about how she was the chosen one. She was the first one, referring to, we believe, her racial heritage. And she also made comments about how white people are choosing to tan. Why are they trying to get burnt skin, e.g. like hers? And this video was already dismissed as potentially racist and quite extreme before we revealed this more concerning later element, which is that several people in her celebratory collage of faces associated with Black History Month did have extremely dark pasts. One of them, Assata Shakur, is a convicted murderer. She's on the run still, is in the FBI's most wanted terrorists list. She's been on the run since 1979. She killed a police officer. Khalid Abdul Mohammed, he gave a speech in 1993 when he said that Jews were the bloodsuckers of black people. He also described the Pope as a no-good cracker, which is a derogatory term towards white people. There were other cop killers in that list, and also within those photos was a man called Eldridge Cleaver, another member of the so-called Black Panther group from the late 20th century. He was convicted of several rapes, and he described rape as an insurrectionary act. He said he was trampling on white man's laws. All of this was included within Dawn Butler's video, which she posted on social media, speaking over what other critics have described as a black supremacist video. One critic, Alka Segal Cuthbert from Don't Divide Us, a campaign group, said that the government's silence on this was astonishing. She said that the footage reveals some deep-seated bigotry towards white people, and it's very concerning that she has included these portraits. Well, when I raised this with the Labour Party yesterday morning, they didn't offer a response. They declined to comment. They didn't want to distance themselves officially and on the record from this footage. They said I should just go to Dawn directly. Well, Ms Butler didn't respond to my request for comment, but after we broke the story this morning, she did delete the video, re-upload it without that footage. And again, as I should stress, the video was already very controversial before we made these exclusive revelations. But she's also issued a statement that I think you've got, Martin.
Yeah, and so she made a concession by removing the terrorists, the rapists, the anti-Semites and the cop killer from the video. And she did issue a statement. Before I get to my panel, I think it's important, let's read out this statement now from Dawn Butler. Once she'd removed that video and edited it, she said this: I was recently informed that a social media video I posted this week included some individuals whose views and actions I strongly oppose. She then went on to add, as someone who takes great pride in championing equity, equality and diversity for all communities, who wants a society where people live in peace and harmony, and the eradication of racism and a world free of violence, especially women and girls, I have edited the video. Charlie Peters, there's one key word missing from that statement, and it's the word sorry.
Yes, it's not an apology. She's not apologising for the footage she's uploading. She's not apologising for the statement about burnt skin, which I think possibly more controversial than the figures that I've revealed, because it could be, Martin, that she's just made a mistake. She's uploaded these photos into her compilation. It could be made by a staffer, although we should ask, where have they found those photos? What's the source of these individuals? Why are they being praised? But there's no apology whatsoever, and there's also silence from the Labour Party.
Charlie Peters, another cracking scoop. Thank you very much for sharing it with us on the show. And let's discuss this now with my panel. Still in the studio, the former Conservative MP, Rainal Jayawardena, and of course the former Labour Special Advisor, Paul Richards. Paul, I'm going to have to start with you again, because this is another story where the kind of trouble is from the Labour Party. Dawn Butler, she was very controversial for a long time. I think Keir Starmer did a good job of gagging her these past couple of years. Every time she was on the Jeremy Vine show, she seemed to put her foot in her mouth. She became an accident waiting to happen. Now Dawn Butler's back.
Well, I don't think she made these videos, did she? This is not her handiwork.
Oh,
she's
come on.
Hang on.
You'd be all over it.
She then, puts it up on social media without checking. This is, basic politics 101. Do your due diligence and make sure there isn't this sort of hostage to fortune. When you rightly pointed out that some of these characters are absolutely beyond the pale, she took it down and said, I'm sorry, and that's the end of that. She's admitted that she did a foolish thing. And she's not standing by it, she's taking it off social media. But doesn't it just make the point? They should just check. Any politician being out there on this sort of thing needs to do the due diligence, check out who these people actually are before sticking them all over socials.
So there we go, Randall, a simple admin error.
Well, it's double standards, just like the donations that we've seen to the Labour Party right now. If this was a Conservative MP, they'd be calling for resignations, they'd be asking for a standards inquiry in the House. But now we're just meant to forget about it without even an apology. And I do think it is deeply troubling, once again, that the identity politics that some people in the Labour Party hold so dear is once again at the fore. We've seen in Birmingham this week two black British heritage people standing for the leadership of the Conservative Party, almost without mention of their heritage, versus a Labour Party here, which is obsessed by identity politics.
Let's flip this, Paul. An admin error, you say, it should have been checked. Let's just flip this. Let's just say a Conservative posted a video that was purely and provably Islamophobic. There was a rapist who'd raped a black person. There was a cop killer who'd killed a black cop. There was a terrorist who'd blown up a mosque. You wouldn't be saying this was an admin error. You'd be demanding straight away that this MP should stand down, and perhaps rightly so.
Well, it would come under the same degree of scrutiny that we're now applying to it. But my point is that this is not a deliberate act by Dawn Butler to cause trouble and dismay. Having identified it, thanks to your investigative journalism, she's immediately acted and taken it off.
She hasn't said sorry, she just edited out the rapists.
I think she's done the right thing by dropping it, and I would say to her, you know, you should have done the due diligence in the first place.
Maybe the Labour Party should drop her.
No, it's not a Labour Party issue. This is an individual
She's a Labour MP.
She's a Labour MP. I mean, there have been far less serious things that have gone out that have been seen the Labour Party demanding the resignation of any Conservative who's done anything like this. You have to concede, Paul. This feels like she's got out of jail.
Disagree. She's going to come under a lot of scrutiny for this, and she has got to now look at her own internal processes as how this happened in the first place. It's obviously unacceptable. And, you know, she didn't make the video, did she? But she's obviously repeated something without checking.
It's gone out under her name. She's a member of Parliament. If Nigel Farage done anything, even remotely in the same ballpark, you know, she'd be leading the pitchforks.
She's not standing by it and saying, yes, these are great heroes. She said, these are terrible people. I don't stand by them. What they've said and done is horrible. And I've taken it off my social media feed. So she's taken swift executive action once it's been pointed out to her. I think any reasonable person would do the same.
We'll have to remember that get-out-of-jail card when it's a Conservative who does a similar gaffe in the future. Thank you very much, Paul Rano, and, of course, Charlie Peters. Another fantastic scoop from you, my old son. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. Now, I've already read that statement out. I wouldn't put you through that twice. Let's move quickly on. Thanks to my panel. Coming up next, Stonergate rumbles on as Lord Ali bailed out a fellow peer caught in the historic Expenser scandal. More on that next.
Hello, good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, as we head into the weekend, things are going to turn increasingly unsettled with some outbreaks of rain, but there's not going to be a total washout and there will still be some brighter interludes at times. To end the week, though, we do still have high pressure dominating, bringing plenty of fine and dry settled conditions before low pressure generally takes hold as we head into the weekend. Overnight, though, plenty of clear spells, which means it is going to be feeling cold, colder than last night, and we're likely to see some mist and fog. This might just be a little bit stubborn to clear at times, particularly across parts of Yorkshire. A different story in the west, though, as we start to see more and more cloud to spill into northwestern parts, even with some light rain by the time we reach Friday morning. So a bit of an unsettled start, fairly damp just in western parts of Scotland, a few drips and drabs of rain across northern parts too. Generally drier further east, but likely rather cloudy. Similar across Northern Ireland with some outbreaks of rain just starting to push into the west. Elsewhere, though, as I say, there will be some mist and fog in places, a little bit slow to clear through tomorrow morning, but largely bright once this clears away. And here we do generally have high pressure sticking around, so still plenty of sunny spells once that fog clears in the morning, and with light winds it should feel fairly pleasant here. A different story in the northwest, though, cloud continuing to spill in here with some outbreaks of rain and turning rather blustery under those cloudier skies too, but where you do catch the sunshine with highs of 16, 17 across the south and southeast, it should still be feeling rather pleasant. As we head into the weekend, fairly similar to start, likely a chilly start across central and southern UK, perhaps some fog in the morning, but generally dry and settled. Outbreaks of rain still in the northwest, and we have this area of heavy rain just moving into the southwest later into the day. So likely to see some quite heavy downpours later in Saturday, and generally unsettled over the weekend and into next week.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Daubney, standing in for the big man. Now, here's a story that simply will not go away. Labour's Donegate sleaze scandal, it just rumbles on. Today, The Times revealed that the man at the centre of it all, the multi-millionaire Lord Ali, lent Labour peer Baroness Udin a whopping 62 grand to help repay wrongfully claimed expenses. Now, this comes after Lord Ali himself was placed under investigation by the Lord's Standards Watchdog for allegedly failing to register interests. And this was supposed to be the party of change. But does this just prove that actually they're all the same? Is Starmer already losing the grip of his government? Well, joining me now is my panel of the former Conservative MP Ranil Jayawardena and the former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards. This time, Ranil, I'm going to start with you. This story should have been put to bed by now. It just goes on and on and on. Yesterday in Brussels, Sir Keir Starmer meant to be resetting the relationship with Brussels. Even friendly journalists were asking him only one thing about this ongoing rumble: his solution to pay back 6 grand. What about the other 101 grand?
Well, I know. I mean, it's a really bad political judgment here, and it's extraordinary they've chosen to do this in such a short space of time. I mean, it took the Conservative Party, regrettably, 14 years to get to this sort of position. It's the hypocrisy that really gets me, though. You know, actually, he's declared everything properly. So's every other Labour MP, as far as I'm aware. So they've done everything by the rules, but it's the hypocrisy. Angela Rayner criticised Boris for a holiday, then she took a free holiday. You know, Rachel Reeves taking money, Keir Starmer taking money, having criticised other Conservatives for doing the same. So it's the hypocrisy here that's the problem. They can't say with one hand Conservatives shouldn't accept donations and then take hundreds of thousands of pounds themselves. So to now pay back £6,000 really demonstrates they don't get it. They don't get it at all.
And Paul, isn't that the issue? It's like if you stand on a platform of we are the party of morality, we're the ones we're gonna blast the sleaze out of Westminster, we're gonna drain the swamp, and yet here we go again with echoes of Animal Farm. They've all got their snouts in their trough. They're exactly the same as the previous lot. In fact, Starmer's taken even more wonga.
I mean, you will be asking all the Conservative Party leadership contenders, presumably, about all the hundreds of thousands of donations that they've received over the last few weeks. I mean, as you say, Randall, no rules have actually been broken. And unless we dramatically change the way we fund our politics and ask the taxpayer to stump up for some of this stuff, then we do have a set of rules which says...
The taxpayer does stump up. The taxpayer pays their wages.
And not a single one of those candidates has ever criticised a Labour MP until now, until this issue.
So do you want to change the rules then? Let's say that no donations allowed, no gifts,
my contention is the opposite, that the Labour Party shouldn't be hypocrites criticising the Conservative Party for taking donations.
No rules have been broken.
I said that a minute ago. I think you listened to me a moment ago. Yeah. You know, the point is that the Labour Party consistently criticised Conservatives for legitimately accepting and declaring donations for various things related to their work. And now they have said, but it's all right for us because we're
nothing to see then. Let's just move on.
Well, that's exactly Labour's position, and it's wrong.
But the point is, you know, it's like we will not stand for this in government. You know, Boris Johnson's got his gold embossed wallpaper This is an outrage. And suddenly, Sir Keir Starmer's got free specs. He's going to Taylor Swift with the missus.
I think
it's the same thing.
I think it's a question of scale as well. I mean, Boris Johnson's gifts compared to a pair of glasses and some tickets is pretty, different, I would say.
Well, the amount of donations, 107,000 is the most of any political...
Yeah.
Not compared
Starmer's in front. He's a Premier League.
By some way in the last
not
Parliament.
compared to some of these donors that are giving money to the leadership contenders.
The figures came out last week. Starmer is the Champions League winner.
Also, I would say Boris Johnson hasn't given any of it back, and Starmer has said that the money he's had since being Prime Minister...
£6,000, that's a decent lunch.
Well, that shows that it wasn't that much money then that he's received compared to these hundreds of thousands.
Paul, you must concede this is just now becoming a perpetual hangover. It's a cloud over the government. An attempt today to throw a story out to distractors was the Chagos Island, which
come on. You're not suggesting that was because that was just merely a bit of media management. And this was a major strategic decision in British interests.
Well, maybe.
As a result of years of diplomacy. They maybe just throw this out as chaff.
Maybe no matter what you say about people like Mandelson and Campbell, they knew how to manage the press. You think at least the Labour Party is having a nightmare. They can't get a good headline, even out media organs that willed them into power.
I don't believe in 5 years' time when the election comes around anybody will even remember this.
You seriously believe that?
I think it's absolute froth. I think it'll just come and it will go.
But then why is he repaying £6,000?
Well, he's obviously took a view that as Prime Minister he shouldn't have done it, and that's fair enough.
So he accepts that it was wrong?
As Prime Minister, yeah, that's his. He's a very honourable man. He's a very decent chap, and
so
he's decided it's a bad idea.
The £6,000 bit was bad, but the £101,000 bit wasn't.
I think there is. I mean, to be fair, there is a difference between what you're doing in opposition to what you do as Prime Minister, and I think that was the.
So the leadership candidates, they're fine then because they're in opposition.
Well, I think. We'll see. Let's put them under the same scrutiny. Some of the money we don't even know where it came from.
What about the £62,000 given to Baroness Udin? We found out today.
It wasn't given. It was a loan. And Wahid Ali wants nothing from the Labour Party. He's just a genuine nice man who happens to be very rich.
Just a philanthropist.
Yes, I mean, what does the Labour Party got that he could possibly want?
Well, you tell me. He gets a pass to Downing Street. He's like swanning around Downing Street.
He can go to Downing Street any time he likes, And also, he's a member of the House of Lords and has been for 25 years. There's nothing we have that he wants. He is genuinely helping out his friends, and I think that's entirely reasonable.
Actually, I'd agree with you on this. I think that Lord Ali actually is not the story here. I think he's a perfectly decent man by all accounts. I don't know him well.
He's a lovely man.
But
nice man.
The point here is actually the current politicians in the government. That's the story. It's the people who criticised one party when they were in government for taking donations who are now happy to accept them themselves. That's the story here.
And isn't the point, like Angela Rayner, for example, was frothing at the mouth in opposition about freebies, for the Conservatives. And there she is, Angela Raver, going off to Ibiza, 836 quid freebie in a penthouse in New York on New Year's Eve, popping the corks, every inch the champagne socialist.
Well, she's allowed a holiday, and if somebody
pay for a holiday,
pay for it the same as every other person in Britain.
Well, that would be the taxpayer paying for it, which you don't agree with. This was a private donation from somebody she knew. That's all right, isn't it?
But why criticise Boris for having a free holiday then? If it's suddenly all right, why did you criticise Boris?
Well, I think she's entitled to a holiday.
I think
that if somebody
different rules for Labour.
Everyone's entitled to a holiday. Everyone's entitled to go for a night out.
This is not taxpayers' money, though, is it?
Who can forget Michael Gove dancing? I'm trying to still forget it.
In fact, that was a wonderful moment, wasn't it? You can all remember it well.
Everyone's allowed a night out. Everyone's allowed to let their hair down. Everyone's allowed a holiday. But this, you have to admit, Paul, is a story now about double standards. In opposition, Labour Party...
I honestly don't think it is. And I think once we get into reforming the health service, sorting out the education system,
nobody's talking about that.
Cops on the streets, that's how this government will be judged on those deeds, not the
You
words.
can say, Paul, and maybe you believe it, you can say, no one cares about this, it's froth, it's chip paper. The fact of the matter is, nobody's talking about Labour Party policy. They're all talking about this scandal still.
I'm not saying people don't care about it, and I do understand people's anger about it, but I will just invite people to look at the detail and see that no laws have been broken, no rules have been broken, and think about what the government's actually going to do for their lives, and that's how the government will be judged in 5 years.
So will the Labour Party, when the Conservative Party wins again, will the Labour Party take
when's
this...
that happening now?
Will the Labour Party then accept that it's acceptable for Conservative politicians to accept donations?
We'll all be old men by then, I suspect.
But will
maybe
have they learned
let's have that conversation.
Have they learned their lesson? Because I think not.
Grey.
I think here we've heard it very, very clearly. It's one rule for Labour and another rule for everyone else. That's the truth.
Do you think that's the point? And also politics, as you know, is about timing. This all came against the backdrop of acting that winter fuel allowance for £300. £300, a lot of money to 10 million pensioners. Apparently, £6,000, not very much money for the Prime Minister. It's bad timing, it's a bad look.
I think there is a question about the optics on that, and I'm happy to concede that. And I do think, you know, the fact that the pension is going up because of the triple lock, that should have been announced before the calibration of the winter fuel allowance was announced. And that way around, it just looked terrible. I completely agree with that. But, you know, the action is still the right one in terms of the economy. But there needs to be a sharpening up of the act in terms of the presentation. Happy to say that.
Well done, Paul. You're doing very well. In a stiff headwind tonight, has to be said. Paul Richards and, of course, Ranil, thank you very much. We'll be back after the break, thanks to my panel. Now, coming up next, I'll be speaking to the pub landlord being called Britain's strictest carvery owner after he started charging customers for their leftovers. He's got a major beef at his carvery. More on that next.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Please tell me that we're British. In our darkest hour, we can work around this. The beer will still be flowing at Christmas. Tell me, please.
Martin, without using bad language, there's no words to describe that this is another major blow to the hospitality sector. I wake up every day with anxiety thinking, what's going to happen to us now? Oh, my God, now the weather's against us. Not only are the government absolutely battering us, then the weather's now hitting us as well.
Kate Stewart, this can only mean one thing. Prices, once again, going through the roof.
And there's nothing we can do. We have on costs. We have to buy from the brewery. We have the VAT. We have then the VAT, what we take. It is an absolute nightmare. To be in the pub game now, Martin, is very, very difficult. And there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Everything just keeps hammering us from every different direction. And obviously, we have to pass that on to the customers, then price increases. There's nothing we can do. We don't want to sell beer at an inflated price. We want it as cheap as possible to get people through them doors. But we have no option. They're going to go up again in the new budget. You know, there's no help for us. What are we supposed to do, Martin, except the only option is to close the doors and say, enough is enough. We can't do this anymore. I absolutely cry my eyes out having to put the prices up because you think, oh, my God, people are just going to turn away and walk. But we can't swallow the costs all the time, Martin. It's impossible for us to do because we will go bankrupt. There has to be there's inflation getting hammered on us yet again, and we have to pass it on. I feel it when I take my children out for something to eat. You're like, wow, that has just cost a fortune. But what is the answer? The answer is the government needs to look at saving the hospitality sector and stop being so greedy in everything that they take away from us, or there won't be pubs.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Daubney, standing in for the big man. Now, I love this story. A pub landlord has got a major beef with wasteful customers at his weekly Sunday carvery. Mark Graham was so incensed with wasteful customers piling on all the trimmings, he even charged them extra if they were throwing their unwanted tuck into the bin. Now, let's introduce now the landlord of the Star Inn, which newspapers are calling Britain's strictest carvery. Mark Graham, landlord of the Star Inn pub. Welcome to the show. We've certainly got the nation talking, Mark. Can we start with the notion of what gave you the idea of charging punters for wasting food?
Well, it was just we'd noticed an increase of just pure, unadulterated wastage. Stupid wastage, over-the-top wastage. Not your normal couple of potatoes and peas. We're talking platefuls of food.
So people at your boozer, like many fine corners, and by the way, the food looks excellent, 12 quid a head. I'd like a little taste of that. They're allowed to go up for your meat choices, and then they're allowed to go back for as many helpings of vegetables and sides as they like. So is this a case of people finish off their first plate and they're going back and simply doing one of those kind of food mountains that we see, and then they're chucking it in the bin, and you think that's totally wasteful? Is it that?
Yes, we've had that. We've had people come up for a full plate full of food and go and sit down, eat that, come up for another full plate full of food, try and take that away. They bring their own tubs and try and take it away, pay for one meal, eat two. But this was actually a case of where the two ladies just filled each individual plate with two full meals and sat down and just left it.
So the second portion, they didn't touch it. I understand, Mark, you were taking photographs of this wastage and posting it on social media, and that got you quite a lot of responses, divided the nation. What's been that? You can see that your instructions on screen there, and I'm astonished and frankly appalled to learn that people, they're taking Tupperware containers in and trying to fill up to take home.
Yeah, what you said's not quite right. What actually happened is the two ladies started posting on social media, keyboard warriors. I was just going to leave it go. I had no intentions of entering into any conversation with that. I'd already said my piece. I took the photographs because I could see there was going to be a problem. It was just to cover my own back. I thought something might come up. These two ladies went on social media and basically didn't tell the whole truth. Were very economical. They said they left a couple of potatoes and a few peas, which they hadn't done. They'd left, as you can see, two full meals.
And so you were taking the photographs were there, and you were charging them £4.80 per head for that wastage. How did you do that?
This incorrect. £2.40 per person, £4.80 in total. 20% of £12, £2.40 per person.
And as far as the feedback from your punters at the Star Inn, what's the feedback been?
Well, until when they first went on, everybody was on the side of the lady saying, well, quite often I'd leave a little bit of food in this, that and the other. But once I put the photographs on and how much they'd left and what they'd actually done, then it all changed. Everyone's going, yes, you're in a world now where there's too much wastage. There's food banks everywhere. There's kids that the only meal they get is a school dinner. And there's just far too much wastage. And these people were just entitled, in my mind. They just filled their plates, left it, and didn't give a damn.
And as far as the threshold for you charging people, I mean, what is it? Is it one potato, two potato, three potato, four?
No. This was the first time we've ever had to do it. This was excessive. It's basically a meal. If it looks like there's still a meal left on your plate, I'm going to charge you for it. But if you leave a few potatoes, a few peas, not a problem. If you've got kids, it doesn't apply to kids because, you know, how fussy kids can be. We let, no problems with kids. If you've got dietary requirements, if you're not feeling well, no problems. It's just over excessive waste. That's all it is.
And you even say on your information there, Mark, that you can take away a doggy bag in tin foil. People often, of course, take away their food to give to their dog at home, but you're just not allowed to take in your own tub. It sounds to me like you've got a conversation going. Anyway, Mark Graham, thank you, landlord at the Star Inn Pub, and I wish you very best. No doubt this Sunday you'll be absolutely packed out. I hope it works out. Thank you very much.
I think there'll be a few.
Now, coming up next is another hearty meal. It's the State of the Nation, and I've been joined by Jacob Rees-Mogg. Tonight's chef, what's on your menu?
What are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about freedom of speech with the Durham Union, an ancient, long-standing free speech bastion at Durham University, isn't allowed to attend the Freshers' Fairs because it won't sign up to an equality, diversity and inclusion approach. And the Student Union has stopped it going. And, of course, the Conservatives had introduced a law that would have made universities be bastions of free speech. The Labour Party tried to undermine it as soon as they got in. The Labour Party hates free speech because free speech always exposes the follies of socialism. So that's going to be our opening. And then we're very lucky. We've got an interview with Liz Hatton, who's the young lady who took photographs of the Prince and Princess of Wales at the investiture yesterday, who has cancer and is
absolutely
being
beautiful set of photographs.
Amazingly
Beautiful.
brave. And so I'm going to be talking to her as well.
And I thought those photographs were so wonderful. Of course, like Kate has been through so much of her own health issues, and to be embracing Liz like that, I mean, it reminded me of the very best of Princess Diana.
It's truly amazing, isn't it? And it shows the royals at their best as being able to empathise with people across the country through things that have happened to them.
And on the political front, no doubt, Jacob, you'll be frothing at the mouth about the Chagos Islands, an astonishing piece of foreign policy, 5 minutes into the Labour Party's government. What's your take on that?
It's utter madness. In a world where China is gearing up against the West, has been behaving towards MPs in a way that you would hope that friendly nations didn't, to surrender to the Chinese by handing over the Chagos Islands is a really, really foolish strategic decision made by socialists who don't understand the history of the nation or indeed have any proper concern for the security of the nation. Remember how many of them backed Jeremy Corbyn when he wanted to leave NATO? They can't be trusted with the security of the Western world.
Do you think, Jacob, got a quick 30 seconds, there might be danger in the air, for example, residents of the Falklands or even Gibraltar?
Well, I noticed that the governor of the Falklands came out immediately and said, don't worry, the Falklands are safe. He hasn't had to say that since 1982. So the fact that he's got to say it shows that this will be worrying people. You can't trust the Labour Party to look after the British national interest. They always prefer the interest of the foreign state to the British state. And this is utterly craven and craven to the communist Chinese.
And I wonder if actually this is the direction of the travel of the government. They seem to be very guilty about Britain's colonial past, the empire, racism, slavery. Is this them flashing their garter about the future direction of travel? So Jacob Rees-Mogg's superb State of the Nation, of course, coming next. Thank you very much for joining me tonight, standing in for Nigel Farage. If you like me, I'm back 3 till 6 p.m. tomorrow. No, I'm not. I'm on a day off. I'll see you Monday. But first, here's your weather with Honor Krizik.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, as we head into the weekend, things are going to turn increasingly unsettled with some outbreaks of rain, but there's not going to be a total washout and there will still be some brighter interludes at times. To end the week, though, we do still have high pressure dominating, bringing plenty of fine and dry settled conditions before low pressure generally takes hold as we head into the weekend. Overnight, though, plenty of clear spells, which means it is going to be feeling cold, colder than last night, and we're likely to see some mist and fog. This might just be a little bit stubborn to clear at times, particularly across parts of Yorkshire. A different story in the west, though, as we start to see more and more cloud to spill into northwestern parts, even with some light rain by the time we reach Friday morning. So a bit of an unsettled start, fairly damp, just in western parts of Scotland, a few drips and drabs of rain across northern parts too. Generally drier further east, but likely rather cloudy.